Erin, thanks, Eastern Cascade Audubon Society. I'm happy to be here. I live in Bent and I have been touring around a bit with Halcyon Journey, Search of the Bald Kingfisher. Came out at the end of April. I have enjoyed the process of bringing the Belted Kingfisher book into the world. And I think I'll just say a little bit about me. I have a long time career as a writer, journalist, nature writer, interpretive sign writer. I worked in the past for um, different things. I was a communications director for the Sage Grouse Initiative. I worked for the National Wildlife Federation off and on, writing for them. But this book is was a long time coming and means a lot to me. And I want to just get right into the PowerPoint that I put together. So I'm going to share my screen, see how that goes. We got to get this.
The one that's red.
There you go. And then do need to put it on. What we didn't practice, Erin, was just getting the slideshow. It's a little different from mine at home.
I'm going to do that. We usually hit that.
Right. Over. I'm not sure.
The one over there.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
And then in order to kind of minimize this.
Mm. Oh yeah, got it. Minimized. Okay. And hopefully I can use this flicker, right?
Is that one of the slides? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, the one thing I also would be nice to not have that on the top of the screen for people here.
Yeah.
I just minimize that. Do you know Nancy? Oh, if it'll just start.
That little thing is actually not the clicker for the.
Okay, it looks like I can move. Can I move it for this? There, sorry, just. We need to go backwards. This is not my. Okay, we are starting again here. Let's begin. I've got this figured out now. So, welcome. I'm very excited. This is the first time I've been able to present for my book to tell people the big news. If you haven't heard it yet, I hear some people are nodding. They know that the American Birding Association's Bird of the Year for 2023 is the Belted Kingfisher. And I was really thrilled when I heard that news came out in the end of December. And I love this illustration, this beautiful painting by Liz Clayton Fuller. And I recommend, if you haven't listened to the American Birding Association podcast, the very first one in January has an interview with her that's just marvelous about how she painted this bird. It took her 100 hours. And the very last thing she painted on the kingfisher? Anyone know? The eye. The eye. Yeah. The eye. She says the eye of the kingfisher is what ties it all together. So I love that. So now I'm going to move on to beginning with my humble gratitude for the indigenous peoples who have known the belted kingfisher since time immemorial. So rattle greetings from the kingfisher. You've heard that sound, familiar to a lot of people here. And it's what the indigenous names that I have learned for the kingfisher I think fit the bird much more than the word kingfisher does. And I'm sharing a few. These are all in the book. The top two are from Oregon. The Coos tribe has the Hannes and the Milik, and the Shijichis and Chiapi are, well, they say kingfisher. And then over in Missoula, Montana, where much of my book took place, the pronunciation from the Salish word is Tishlis. Tishlis. So I love the way there's an onomatopoeia to the sound of the the word in the native languages. So I appreciate that too. And now I'm going to move to the book itself. A lot of here probably know who Pete Dunn is. He's written all my books, and he wrote a little blurb for my book, but he started it this way, and I thought he must know that this is going to be the bird of the year because what he wrote: as a bird wedded to clean fish-bearing waters, the Celtic kingfisher could serve as the poster child for North America's waterways. And so my presentation tonight is going to go, yes, they just picked the very best bird possible in so many ways. And I'll be sharing some read little excerpts from my book and some natural history as well. So my narrative does thread also a bit of memoir, and it's a story of curiosity and adventure from the stream's edge in Missoula, Montana, where I used to live, all the way out to the back falls of the Smithsonian, to South Africa, Rio Grande, London, and returning to my home Greek. I'm going to read just this little bit. In certain tribal stories, the belted kingfisher is a messenger, helper, or protector. To tap into those powers takes more than one season. Each year, I recorded behaviors in the company of naturalist friends. By the forested creek's edge, I would find the convergence of Greek and indigenous myths, kinship with wild inhabitants, and personal transformation. I'd also like to acknowledge before I move on my wonderful publisher, Oregon State University Press. They've just been amazing through the whole process and still are supportive. And and this is the next person that needs a lot of acknowledging. How many people know about Ron Popish? Has anybody met him here? Some friends. He is quite a bird illustrator, biologist, photographer, and he did all the illustrations in my book. And we worked together quite a bit on interpretive science. And you can see our work. I did the writing and he did the illustrations. We also had a designer too, and they're up and down the Oregon coast. They're for the Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. They're on many state parks in about 25 locations on the coast. And there's 67 signs. And I was able to sneak in some kingfishers. See, I picked a couple that had kingfishers in them. What I'm really enjoying, when I put this together this time, I was like, oh, I have to include these pictures because when people initially got my book, and I encourage you to do this as well, I love this, they would send me pictures of where they were reading my book outside. So there's one in the state of Washington, the one in the middle of the city of Roxon, Duran, who's right here. You hold your hand up, send me that photo. You were finding, taking a peek. And then up in the corners, my son was reading it up on my jumbo in Missoula, and my friend in Vermont. And then we have a dog reader. We have this dog is quite fond of belted kingfishers. And then I have myself way up on the corner there, and that I climbed to the top with Wes, my husband who's here, and my son, because the top of Stewart Peak in Missoula, Montana features in my book, kind of the headwaters of Rattlesnake Creek. So I had to bring it up there last summer. So it was a 18-mile round trip hike. And then I have a brother in Tucson, so he thought he'd see if the kingfisher liked the cactus. Well, let's get to the kingfisher and what an amazing bird this is. And everyone likes to compare birds to the size of a robin. What I love is that the kingfisher is a little bit bigger than a robin, but look how amazingly different they are. You know, with the size of the head of the kingfisher is disproportionately large, right? And that fantastic crest. And look at the fishing beak. Of course, the robin has a couple berries. I thought that was a pretty big achievement there for the robin. And also, the robin has much longer legs. You know, if you are never going to see a kingfisher hopping around, right? They have teensy tiny feet. And so that gives you just a little fun sense of what it's like. Oh, and there's a couple other things to say. Of course, the behavior of robins is flocking, togetherness, companionship, and the kingfisher, the opposite, wary, territorial, skittish, the photographer's nemesis, right? What This is what they're all about, right? The incredible fishing bird, and probably some of you here have seen them, thwacking that fish after they catch it and turning it around to swallow it head first. And then, of course, another phenomenal thing about the kingfisher. What is that you can see here? Does anyone want to call it out? What about the plumage? It's so unusual compared to most birds in the bird world. Colors, right? The female is brighter than the male. She's more colorful than the male. And in the bird world, as we know, that's very rare with mallard drakes. And, pretty much whenever there's a color difference, you almost always think it's a male. And this became something in my book I was very intrigued with and followed quite a bit. So it's another way that I think the kingfisher deserves to be the bird of the year, the queen fisher, female power. So same. And then here's another little fun thing, just because of these photos. This one with the little feathers sticking out the side, that little female, she is a first year bird. And you can tell that because she's got bronzy color on that upper band. So when you see the bronzy colors, and then another thing, which is interesting too, is the male juvenile birds will have some reddish color down under their wings. And so you can be fooled, but they'll never have it going across as a band. Then they will lose that. So that's an intriguing thing, isn't it? And this is particularly intriguing. Would have thought a bird nesting in a bank, not building a stick nest, that the kingfisher is a bank nester and digs burrows. The male and the female use those teensy tiny feet, and they will dig in a vertical stream bank, river bank, convenient spot, usually away from people. And that's about a tennis ball sized hole. And then the tunnels will go back 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet deep. And at the back is a football sized burrow. And that's where the female will lay 5 to 8 eggs. And all throughout, another great thing about kingfishers is they help out each other. The male is in there taking his turn incubating, and they do all the feeding together. So considering how they are skittish, territorial with each other outside of the breeding season, they're pretty darn great as mates. They do a good job as parents, I would say. Oops, probably.
You want to pause for 1 second? Maybe we could try to get rid of that near the top. We thought
Oh, it never did go away, did it?
Yeah.
Is there a way? Or
We'll see.
okay, you want to come over here and see what you can do? I know, and it has this thing that says talking too, doesn't it?
It's like
But I don't know how to do that either.
private video.
Videos. Oh, that talking thing is too. Oh, we can drag it.
Oh,
This one from here. We'll go like this.
On the cursor. Yeah, so there you go.
Drag it down. Oh no, it's not.
Yeah, always hit that.
Well, you're in the center and Brian.
I can't do
You won't. Or sorry about the technical stuff. Either probably none of us.
PC, I'm a math person.
That's the issue. Okay, sorry about that. So hopefully that's a little.
Yeah. We're speaking up here, and this is a great improvement. So okay. All right, I've got a little quiz for you. This number continues to change, and hint is that we seem to find out there's more and more species that the more people understand the differences of taxonomy. So how many kinds of kingfishers in the world do you think there are? Does anyone want to throw out a guess? I think by 120. Anyone else want to guess?
I'm seeing
50 or 60? Anyone else?
20.
20. What's your? Yeah.
Sure.
Jim has won the prize. You studied up. He had it. You're the first person who's ever got that. That's a good stuff. Well done. So it's pretty amazing when here in North America we just have the belted kingfisher pretty much, except down by the Mexico border. You can see the ringed green and occasionally the Amazon if you're extremely lucky. But look around the world, how many beautiful, radiant kingfishers there are. This is the little sampling of them. You can always tell they're a kingfisher because they have those big heads and those dagger bills and those tiny feet. And surprisingly, they are burrow nesters. Some of them might be in termite mounds or in trees, but they cavate a burrow wherever they are. And they can be the African dwarf kingfisher is a sign of a hummingbird, all the way up to the kookaburra that we all know in Australia as a kingfisher. And some of them are birds that are not fishing at all. Quite a lot of them are not fishing birds. They are in tropical rainforests and other places where they can, but they still do this, plunging down head first thing, but they'll go after lizards or whatever is their food. So they're amazingly beautiful birds. And I'm sure some of you've seen quite a few of them in other parts of the world. But sadly, like a lot of our birds, more than half of the species are at risk, and some from critically endangered to vulnerable habitat, climate change. Fortunately, the belted kingfisher is not one of those, is a really lovely, familiar, beloved bird all across our country and all across North America. However, there are a million fewer breeding kingfishers than there were in 1970. So we do still have to pay attention. They need clean water and fish and fish-filled water, and we have to take good care of our the habitats they need. So then the Latin name for the kingfisher, belted kingfisher, is Megacero Halcyon. Um, um, that comes into play a little bit with the name of my book, Halcyon Journey. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And you can see here on the range map that for the Baltic kingfishers that are in the far north, they are breeding there, but then guess what? It ices over, right? So then they have to go south. And the purple in the middle means Baltic kingfishers can live there year round. Interestingly, if they're going to migrate, it's the females, and the females will leave, and they can, but not all of them do. Like here in Bend, we see females all winter. But when I lived in Montana, all the females left. Maybe it's colder, but and they can go all the way down as far as northern Venezuela, Colombia, Guyana. Well, pretty amazing migrations, but we don't know that much about Baltic kingfishers compared to a lot of things because surprisingly, they're rather little stuck. So right here in Bend, you can find their nest banks. I'm not going to tell you where that is, but that's on the Deschutes River. And you can see there's some little holes. Well, it's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but and then it's always exciting to find a nest bank. And if you do, it's tricky to watch the birds without bothering them. So you have to be extremely physical on it. And if you're a water person on raft or canoe, you'll probably have a better chance of finding their nests. This one turned out to be far easier to look at in a boat than in the car. And over on the Oregon coast, they nest right along the coast. And in fact, this exact scene is in my book. So I decided I would read you a little part out of the introduction. So this was on a memorable evening on the Oregon coast. As golden sun rays lapped upon a sandstone outcrop that stood between me and a vigilant kingfisher, the receding high tide yielded just enough room to edge around the corner within view of a nest hole excavated by the diligent parents. One cautious step at a time, I ducked below leathery green leaves of a salal bush. In my black down jacket, gray pants, and rubber boots, I hoped to blend in like a cormorant. Instead, I faced the full fury of an indignant queen fisher, Her crown was a feathery two-part crest, her throne a lichen-draped branch, her decree a volley of reproving notes. Gaze with longing at the burnished coppery red belt on a moon-white chest and yearn to plead my case. I'm your subject. I will stay right here and fasten myself to the sandstone cliff like a barnacle. I won't be in your way. No, she breezed off to cross the bay that opened to the Pacific. I backed away into the linger of light, leaving the nesting kingfishers in peace. Returning to where my journey began over in Missoula, Montana, my home spot on Rattlesnake Creek. I'm reading from the book. The heartbeat of this story pulses along Rattlesnake Creek in Missoula, Montana, where a pair of kingfishers still court, nest, and tend their young to the music of rollicking currents. Over the course of 7 years, from spring 2008 through the summer of 2015, I followed with curiosity as the birds continued to baffle, elude, and enlighten. And here's the setting. These are from illustrations by Rom. So you can see a little bit of where we'll show that. Yeah, the headwaters of Rattlesnake Creek are up here in this wilderness. And I talked about Stewart Peak and then flows down to the valley. And this is where the heart of the story takes place. It's a 22-mile distance from the Rattlesnake from the wilderness headwaters to the Clark Fork River in Missoula. And the confluence with the Clark Fork down here is called, in Salish, it means place of the bull trout, a very important fish in this area. So let me talk a little bit more about this Halcyon, because this has to do with the title and so much more. I'm going to read from chapter 1. Leaning over the balcony railing of the second-story bedroom, I listened to the surge of Rattlesnake Creek flooding 2 blocks away. Close by, a yellow warbler sang the morning into buttery sweetness. Robins caroled, magpies squawked, but the ringing staccato of the bird I longed to hear would never mingle with backyard birds. Instead, the belted kingfisher would be pelting downstream on strong wings, always looking for fish. Minutes earlier, I read the dictionary word of the day. And you're probably looking at that while I'm reading it, and I didn't realize that the number 1 meaning of Halcyon noun is a kingfisher. And of course, it's this kingfisher, the common kingfisher over in Europe, beautiful turquoise bird, and a mythical bird identified with kingfisher that was fabled to nest at sea about the time of the winter solstice and calm the waves during incubation. Also meaning calm, quiet, peaceful, undisturbed, happy. Well, I was like, oh, bird of happiness. I'm in. I'm going to follow this bird. It's going to be great. And of course, as we heard earlier, they're very hard to follow and they're early. But maybe that's what makes the journey that much more interesting. And it's not easy. A little more, I got into this myth. So tracing the Halcyon definition to an ancient Greek myth, I read of 2 lovers, Halcyon and Ceyx, transformed by the gods Zeus and Hera into kingfishers destined to nest annually over the winter solstice. Then Aeolus, god of the winds and father of Halcyon, would calm the rough waves for 14 days, 7 on either side of the solstice. Sailors called the interlude the Halcyon days, bracketed by storms. I love the idea of transformation into a kingfisher. In fact, since childhood, I dreamed of feathers, light hollow bones, and lofting above the earth on wings that would never let me fall. Pursue a bird of happiness and transformation I was in. So this is a photo of me at age 8 with my brother David, who is 9, at Mount Rainier National Park, where my father was the assistant superintendent. So we had quite a upbringing as children in national parks and nature, and that was a pivotal place for us there. So Within the winter story chapter, I share a lot of indigenous myths of our belted kingfisher. So not just the Greek myth. I love the Greek myth. But this one I like because it also carries over this theme of transformation. And I giving photo credit here to Jim Moody. The very blurry great gray owl picture is mine. But and I'm not a photographer. And by the way, while I'm doing this top wherever I'm showing just these lovely belted kingfisher images that don't have a name, it's all from this photographer named Charles Wheeler, who is over in Watch, Idaho, and just generously said, use as many as you want. And he has a blind on it. It's really lovely. So these all three go together with the story. Oh, we're back up here, aren't we? I got to get rid of this thing again, don't I? Haven't that happened? We got rid of it before, didn't we? Oh no. I must have pushed it something. Oh, what's the more? What's more? Okay, we got more.
Drop down.
Okay.
The screen also said there was someone in the waiting room.
They already were.
Oh no, now I moved it.
Let's pop. Let's see. Let's just take a second. Okay, I think
I must have.
different than the Apple Patch. I'm sorry.
It matters where you hit it.
It does, yes. So I think we're back.
Fit back in middle. Okay. Sorry about that. But now you have great anticipation for this little story I'm going to tell you. All right, from the book. Without the help of this is an origin story from the Arikara people of the Upper Missouri. Without the help of the Kingfisher, the Arikara people of the Great Plains would not have found a better world. To journey westward from a hiding place underground, after the Creator sent floodwaters to eliminate giants, three birds helped them overcome obstacles to reach a better place: a kingfisher, an owl, and a loon. Coming to a chasm, Kingfisher reshaped the earth and laid down an enormous beak that served as a bridge. With a great flapping of wings, Owl cleared a thorny forest, and fast-flying Loon parted a lake. The people could choose whether to continue or turn into the bird that helped them. Kingfisher, I'd be pretty tempted. And it turned out that I would need all the help I could get, as I still do. There we go. Tracking the kingfisher. So I consulted biologists, and there aren't that many of them, but tips, because I really wanted to find a pair of kingfishers to watch during the mating season on this creek that was so near my home. And there were many hours of searching, finding, thinking I figured it out, losing them again. But one thing I wanted to share is when I did find a courting pair that I had to follow, I decided I would give them names. So I'm going to read you this part. I couldn't resist naming the birds right then. While Greek in origin, the names link to, I guess over here above that, I said I had named them Ceyx and Halcyon. So I said, I couldn't resist naming the birds right then. While Greek in origin, the names link to all myths of animal transformation, a common denominator of ancient cultures. Names aside, I vowed to observe as an open-minded naturalist. In my notebook, I penned the symbols for male and female. A male is a circle with an arrow pointing northeast, the identical symbol for the planet Mars. A female is a circle with a cross below it, the symbol for Venus. The steely blue and white male was Ceyx, the son of the morning star. The female was Halcyon, the radiant daughter of Iolus, the wind god. I noticed her belt not quite meeting in the middle, an identifying marker. So after that, I did eventually have this wonderful moment. I think we got somebody talking. Okay, we need to maybe mute somebody.
You can say that maybe.
Can we please mute a mic? We need somebody here to mute their mic. Did we get it? Okay, thank you. All right. Wow. I'm going to go into this exciting moment. A female kingfisher docked on an immense boulder protruding from the far side of the creek. She bore a silvery minnow held lengthwise within her beak. Rattling once, she cranked upward and into the perfect nest hole, the one I'd missed all along. The round hole showed the telltale two furrow marks at the base and rested about 2 feet down from the top of the bank and 4 feet up from the Canaris Creek. Halcyon backed out of the burrow, empty-billed. Her white chest and russet belt and sash sparkled. She hovered, streaked down to the water, deep enough to wet her crest, and muscled up with another fish in her black beak. Landing on the boulder as if to catch her breath, she chattered, launched to flight to the hole entry, pressed her wings closed as if in prayer, and tucked inside with food for the chicks. A halcyon bird, a halcyon day. So that was my very exciting moment. I hadn't found this nest hole, and I finally did. But then there was a problem because they were very alert to my presence. So, as I said, whenever a kingfisher slid into view with a fish, I was on high alert, but so were they. And so it became very imperative to get this. So I ended up ordering this Cabela's turkey hunting blind. Worked out great. Just shake it out there in one shake, hike down. This is on an island, and I had to jump across a little ditch to get there. And this is hidden in the alders, so you can't see the nest on the other side. And everything changed. The world had changed from within the blind. On the one hand, it felt confining. On the other, it was like Harry Potter wearing his cloak of invisibility. Brits have a different term for blinds. They call them hides. I could see the advantage of both names. I wanted the birds to be blind to my presence as I hid like a child in a game of hide and seek. Bang! A dipper clanged into the front screen. I ducked as if someone had thrown a dirt clod. The groggy bird staggered to his feet and lurched into the air. The dipper's world had changed too. A few minutes after the crash, CX touched down with a tumbling of clickety-clackety notes and a fish. There on the boulder, he turned his head toward me. I met his sharp, beady, forward-facing eyes right when I lifted my binoculars. All this is to say is they were very tuned into the blind too, so it wasn't easy. These are birds that never get used to you. They never habituate. They're just always on alert, always. And this is the one time watching kingfishers in the blind where I heard the loudest sound a kingfisher will ever make, and you'll rarely hear it. It's called the scream call, but it's so loud that it just makes you want to jump out of your skin. So, but it eventually, made it through this first season. This is all from the first season. I got to see this. This is actually a picture. A friend came to the blind, took this photo of one of the chicks coming out for the first view of the world. It was quite an incredible moment. So I end the chapter. After finding the nest hole on that breakthrough day of June 4th, they found happiness, accentuated, refined, and honed by the counterpoint of kingfishers coming and going, watching their fierce, unstoppable devotion to their chicks, deepened my connection to the birds as a mother of the sun. And I write that it took my son 18 years to fledge, but once the kingfishers were out of the nest, the parents really only feed them for a week or so, and they have to learn a lot on their own. And it's a dangerous world out there. Predators for kingfishers. This little first-year male, he's doing a good job. He's looking up. What's up there? I got to be careful. It could be this goshawk here. And Cooper's hawks, goshawks are definitely pairs of kingfishers. And there's sometimes some wild descriptions people have witnessed. I haven't, but I've been hearing about them, of kingfishers eluding Cooper's hawks by going into the water, under the water, and up and out to escape them. It's also quite a trick to learn how to fly properly, fish properly. So I say, only a few days after leaving the nest hole, the juveniles had entered a critical phase of flight training. Hollow bones and feathered wings were the given essentials, but the nuances of flying Kingfisher style would take practice. I got to watch some. It was really fun on this little pond nearby, and belly flops and all kinds of hilarious fishing for peacetime needles. It took them a while to figure it out. And the more I learned about the flight of kingfishers, the more I wished I could ask my father. And my father comes into the book quite a bit because he had passed away a few years before that. And I really connected with him in so many ways in this book. He taught me a lot about birds. He was a much better birder. He could identify so many warblers by ear. And as you heard, he was in the National Park Service, but he also, where I was little, before I was even born, he was in the Navy and he was a jet pilot. So he still had that kind of pilot kind of way about him. And he flew the Grumman F9 Panther, which is the first jet of the Blue Angels, and then the F9 Cougar. So he really had the right stuff. He could keep his nerve in tight formations, do touch and go landings on aircraft carriers in the Atlantic. This is all before I was in the picture, but he always retained that, love of flight. So I did wish that I could ask him more about it. But these photos here, that's my son at age 5 with my dad. And to go with this part, I'm going to share from the book. Looking back on birding and hiking trips together, I recalled a day that may have foreshadowed this Halcyon calling. In 1986, I joined Dad to backpack the Appalachian Trail's 100-mile wilderness from Monson to Mount Katahdin, Maine. For the final decade of his career, he served as the AT project manager, a position he created for the National Park Service, overseeing major land acquisitions to protect the 2,190-mile-long corridor. He also backpacked the entire AT in sections, and this was his final leg in the wildest. One morning, outside our shelter, 2 belted kingfishers arrowed low toward us and then swirled away as the sun parted the dawn mist over the west Chairback Pond. Like Halcyon, the beauty was fleeting, and yet the memory indelible. And here we go, plunging into what really I think is one of the more spectacular things about kingfishers, right? The art of this plunge, and this is something those little kingfishers truly had to learn. But those kingfishers, this is Ron's illustration, are very perfectly adapted to do this. And in fact, kingfishers in general that have this head shape were sorry, what I wanted to say is there's a kingfisher that has been used as a model for a design improvement. And you might have heard of this for the Shinkansen train in Japan. And now the head of the train looks like a kingfisher. It solved the design flaw because originally the train was going 200 miles an hour and would enter a tunnel, and the pressure wave at the bullet-shaped front would cause a sonic boom on the exit. But now with this kingfisher shape, the air just flows right around and it's quiet. So this kind of looking to nature for solutions, there's a whole field of study called biomimicry, and this is one of them. So, of course, there's so much to the dive, the head first dive. And I write about it a lot in the book. So I'm just here in the interest of time, I'm just going to mention a few things. The eyes particularly have red eye oil droplets in the retina that reduces the glare and refraction. So that helps them see fish. And they are packed with cones for their sensational viewing. And then you'll find out more in the book. It's more than I want to talk about tonight, but they have this thing called a double foveae going on that really helps them with focusing on fish. And so that when the fish start to escape, they can still see them. And then the hunter, I love that a number of you probably seen David Sibley's What It's Like to Be a Bird book. I love that book. Nice thing. He's such an incredible artist. And he has a whole section on the kingfisher, and he talks about the hover. And this is what he says. If you watch carefully when a kingfisher is hovering, you'll see the head remain stationary in the air holding a fixed position over the water. While the wings flap, the tail adjusts, and the body shifts around, doing the work of flying. It's important to hold the head steady so that the eyes can remain fixed on a potential target below. But the sense and the control involved in this are truly remarkable. The bird has to have an exquisitely delicate sense of body position so that it can adjust wings and tail to compensate for air movements. So next time you see the kingfisher hovering, think about that. Well, let's get back to this red belt lizard. It's going to have the last laugh as to why that is. But all I can say is I did a lot of sleuthing in my course of studying and following kingfishers because I was intrigued. Like maybe the females are being aggressive with each other, and the brighter the belt, the more chance that they're going to get the mate who has that earthen bank. Or maybe the males are like just looking at, or maybe, I have all those things. But what I did decide is I should definitely go check out the closest kin of the kingfisher. So I spent some time on the lower Rio Grande. I have a chapter on the ringed kingfishers pursuing on the lower Rio Grande. And then over, some of you might know Jeff Marks leads trips, and he just gave me this picture, or I asked him if I could use it. It's the giant kingfisher, also a relative of the belted kingfisher. And I write about the giant kingfisher in South Africa. And this, Jeff is in Senegal right now. I mean, literally, I think I just got this from him yesterday. So I thought it was a cool picture, a female. But I thought, well, maybe you can learn something about the coloration of those birds, which is hard to say who's more colorful in either circumstance because they're both very colorful. And then in the middle, I have a chapter in the book where I went to the Smithsonian and I actually pulled out study skins. I had permission, and I looked at all these belts, and I got very fascinated by all the tags and the history. It was something else. So I did quite a few trips away, but then coming home always felt like I brought something new with me. And there too, I had companionship with my friends Lisa and Paul Hendricks, who are naturalists, and they keep watching the kingfisher today. And they became very engrossed in the kingfisher study, and off and on were joining me. And together we witnessed something pretty incredible. So I wanted to share that with you. And we were watching a pair of kingfishers attempting to create a hole for their nest. And well, if you read all the literature about it, it's like, well, they just, hang on to the edge of the bank a little bit and peck around for a while. And then they use their feet and they peck some more. And then once they have their feet going, then they just go for it. We saw something entirely different. These kingfishers were about 12 feet or more from the bank, would be on a branch, would take turns, fly as fast as it could, slam into that bank head first, bang, fall off. Literally, their wings are like this. Then they barrel big and back off to the branch again, and just would take turns just smashing into the bank. And after 3 days of this, they finally made a little cup-shaped hole, and they started digging. And this turned out was the first time this had been ever presented as a finding. So we are published authors. That's my given name, Deborah Richie, and Paul Hendricks, you saw in the pictures, a zoologist. So he was really good. He was like, I don't think this has ever been seen before. So he did all the research on it, but together and so I am a community science published. And my point of showing this is I'm not a, biologist, more than an undergraduate degree in it, but I can make a pretty exciting book being getting published. You just have to observe and go, wow, has anyone ever seen this before? And then we had some coverage about it in the Birdwatching magazine. And that's my point I wanted to mention. I wrote a story for them called Why We Need a Naturalist Renaissance. So I'm encouraging all of you to be out there. To be a naturalist, you need not go far. You need not be a scientist or a full-time observer. You need only to be curious and open-minded. Naturalists are never bored and often delighted. They have a purpose that does not require an assignment or justification. Their work is to head into the field, ready to notice all that unfurls from ferns to the spiraling notes of Swainson's thrushes. And while you're out there looking for one thing, you usually find a whole lot more. And I thought I knew this Rattlesnake Creek. I'd lived in Missoula for 25 years or so. And I was like, I've been there a lot, but no, I got to know that place like never before by sharing it with the inhabitants and having some amazing experiences. These are some of my favorite birds that I watched. The dippers play quite a role in my book. There was a nesting dippers very near the Kingfisher nest, and they would have two broods a year. And so, and unlike the Kingfishers, they would just come right up to me with their little ones stuffing caddisflies and their beaks. So, Nancy, I appreciated your comment earlier about dippers. And, what you noticed with the flipping of the leaves. See, this is what happens. The more you look, the more interesting things happen. You go, well, has that happened before? But then you have to think they're smart, they're ingenious, they're going to figure out some way to get what they want, right? And of course, I love the varied thrush, spotted sandpiper, and cedar waxwing. And this is Meek, and I'm going to share this from the book. We're almost at the end here. Seeking the Halcyon bird, I've come closer to wildlife than ever before. Like one afternoon in late September of 2011, seated by the upper nest bank, drinking in the domain of kingfishers with no real purpose, the creek bubbled over a glossy rock with a gulp and glug, and maroon dogwood leaves shook in a slight breeze. Then, like a river phantom, a sinewy mink flowed over my outstretched bare legs. Feeling the rippling of chocolate-hued fur, I knew the meaning of becoming one with the wild neighborhood. And back here in Oregon, of course, I continued to watch kingfishers. I still do today. And I did some traveling before I arrived in Oregon. And so that's why I put this quote up. The kingfishers rollicking, rolling, rhapsody staccato calls signal our awakening. Attend to be alive is to spread our wings and see where they take us. Well, it did take me back to Oregon. I'm very happy to be here because I had lived in Oregon, moved to Montana, back here, and love it here. So here, living in Bend, I listen for the reverberating notes that ricochet across the jade green currents of the Deschutes River in a mellifluent staccato, always taking me home. There is our familiar Deschutes River. That is my photo up there of the Kingfisher. Caught it going across by the lava. And I thought I would wind it up at the end by talking a little bit of some how you might see it right now. And one of the tricky things about winter with kingfishers is these leafless branches and sometimes snow, they can blend in like this. And so you have to really listen for them. And sometimes they're quiet. So I do try to look for the white. But we play that recording. Oops, get to play here. I just have to hit it. That just happens to be the only one I can find to put on here. But what I want you to listen for is how different their sounds are. It's rather annoyed kingfisher. That one's like going, "You're too close to me. I don't really like that." But you might notice when they're sitting like this, they're just kind of, I almost feel like they're talking to themselves. They're like looking down at the water. And I did this at one other place. I think we have time to do it. I think it sounds like someone rolling their R's. And I cannot roll my R's. So if somebody would like to volunteer and make a trilling sound because they can roll their R, do we have anyone here who can do that? Sure. See, I think that's also what a kingfisher does. Excellent. Thank you. So listen for their different sounds they make. And then, oh, I grabbed this. Jim Moody just saw this young female. You can see all the colors in her upper band right there in Plaza Park, Drake Park. And I was just talking with somebody here about how there are two in Drake Park right now. Right. Can you tell me that, Nancy? Yeah, there's two. So they're right, which normally doesn't mean that they're happily two together. They might be having a little conflict over the fishing spots this time of year because they do spread apart. And then I show these pictures. I just randomly grab these because wires are a pretty good spot to see them in winter. Because why not get an edge on the fishing if there's a wire across the water? So you can look for that. Of course, when you at First Street Rapids. So there's a number of places right now where we're seeing kingfishers. Uh, and oh, here's what I wanted to say about the being on the wire, is that they can change shape. Have you noticed that? It's like sometimes they just sort of scrunch up and they're just like a little small there on the wire. And then they'll just like kind of elongate and look around. So that you got to notice that too. More you look, the more you see. And then the flight of the kingfisher is, I love the way a kingfisher just scoops down with wings like that, right? So when you're out looking for them, Meadow Camp's a great spot. And of course, in Bend, Farewell Bend, Old Mill, Rapid Sawyer Park, look for that flight pattern too. And of course, we all want to see them catch a fish if we can. And sometimes to notice the way they fly low, like their wings will almost touch. But then sometimes you hear that rattle and they're way over. They might be cutting across to another water. So I hope that helps with some ideas. And now I'm going to end the show with this is the Metolius River, and you have one little last activity to do. So this is very easy. So you just have to think of a stretch of water that's familiar to you like. And sometime when you feel like, I could feel one with that neighborhood, you can notice the fish rising, the beaver slapping a tail, who's smoking, dragonfly and swimmer and stem or spider. So put yourself in that scene, and that's where kingfishers bring you, I think. And that's a wonderful thing. And they will always be my compass, my way of keeping myself headed true north. That's from the book in the map. I'll end with saying, yes, the belted kingfisher is a bird of quickening and calm. The bird that mates below a rainbow urges us to chase desires, care for family, excavate the recesses of dreams, fears, and spirit, and to be on the lookout for fleeting beauty. Oops. So thank you. And this is my time to let you ask some questions. I think we have some time now. Yeah, and we can, what we'll also have to do is get them off the thing in a minute. But let's keep this up for just a minute because I want you to have a chance to just see if any of you want my website. It's pretty easy. It's my name, Marina Richie. I have a blog. I write twice a month. Nature, poetry, kingfishers, other things. Feel free to contact me. That's my email. And I will have the books for sale. They're $25 each. And afterwards, I'll have them back here and I can take check and cash and Venmo and credit card. So I would love to, and then I would also say for all of you who are not here, support our local bookstores. I read at Dudley's. They're great. So they should have my book. And the library I know has 5 copies and they're all here. So there's many ways to get hold of my book. So, and then as I note here, I'm going to be speaking, and some of you might be at the Winter Wings Festival. I'm just one of the speakers there. So it might be a little similar to this talk. So I'll see you there. And at that point, should I stop sharing the screen?
How about this? Why don't we leave that up for the moment and see if there's any questions
In this room?
and then after that, stop sharing.
That's, that's all right, let's start with the questions in the room. All right.
One question. Some horrible question. Any information that you came across that talked about maybe how the declines tend to go and they can fish a couple inches up a foot.
They tend to get them at the surface. Every now and then, it's this whole thing. As soon as you think, oh yeah, that's how they do it, then somebody tells you something different. Like, that's one of the most wonderful things about going around and doing these talks. Like this one man said he saw a kingfisher going after crayfish at the bottom of the shallow part of the stream, and the bird would go all the way down to the bottom, which is very unusual for Belted kingfisher. Of course, it was really shallow. But the common kingfisher, you've probably seen those incredibly beautiful photos of the European, the common kingfisher, those ones that everyone shares on the internet with the perfect dive going straight down. They do go quite deep underwater. But the Belted kingfisher tends to try to get them at the surface. And some of it is, I think it's just such effort to get back up. When I interviewed a flight specialist, bird avian flight specialist, he said, that's one of the more remarkable things is, that return, having to hit the water hard with your wings and being a pretty good size. And you think it's like, oh, trying to push off when there's no edge of a swimming pool, and get some motion. So that could be one reason for it. But one thing that is really amazing about them, too, and this is also why they might get them at the surface, is they're very, very good at seeing exactly what size fish they are and where they are. Like when I watched them feed their young, they increase the fish size every week. So when the chicks are very little, you can't even see the fish in the beak. It's so small. And then they just gradually get them bigger and bigger. So that has to be precision fishing right there.
Do they ever stab the fish or do they always bite it?
They always bite it. They always scissor it. I should never say always, right? Because maybe one did. And there it was stuck on the end of the beak. Then Nancy. Yes, they need water is helpful. If it's not clear, you will still see kingfishers, and that's where they sometimes will start taking other prey. They will take crayfish, they will take, well, they're opportunists. Sometimes if it's a big salmon fly or, tiny frog or something. But that's why sometimes they will move around too. The water's too hard to see. Good question. Yeah.
Do the feathers shed the water or do they have to clean oil on them?
They preen the oil. They use their oil guns. They spend a lot of time preening. And they're not, dippers have the huge oil gun, so they can be the ultimate preen oily bird. But this one, kingfishers aren't particularly that way because they don't, they do get wet, but not all the way wet. You see their crest gets pretty wet. Yeah.
What time of the year do they build their nest and do they reuse their nest?
Well, that's a great question. See, I know it's all these things I didn't get to say yet. It depends where they live, but here I think April is a good time for them to start nesting. But if they have a failure or things don't go well, they might still be building their nest in May. And yes, they will reuse their nests. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And one of the things that made them really challenging for me to figure out the nest is they over the years they've created pockmarked holes all over the bank, and so you're like, which one are they really going to nest in? And it's like a guessing game, and they change their mind, So, but yes, they definitely, some of the pairs I watched did use the same hole like 3 or 4 different years. but they'd go away and then come back to it to you, and so it's interesting. Yes.
And any observations of other species using their holes and
Oh, yes.
afterward?
Rough-winged swallows,
Okay.
they love a kingfisher hole because they do not build their own nest like a fang swallow built their own. And so but the thing is they also are super pesky. Like I watched rough-winged swallows just bother the heck out of this incubating pair, and come up, it's like, okay, you have all these swallows you could choose from, but no, you're going to go into the active kingfisher nest, stick your heads in there, and then I'd watch the female or the male come out in the middle of the day off the nest to drive one away. So it almost seemed a little deliberate, but yeah, so rubber wings, as far as I know, ones that use them.
What's their largest predator?
I'd say the goshawk is their largest predator. There are not too many predators. It's mostly the bird hunting. So it would be Coopers. I think sharpshin, they'd be too big for a sharpshin. I don't know. What do you think? Spotting too big for a sharpshin. I think Coopers and goshawk. I mean, there's possible they're a little vulnerable. The young are vulnerable if that nest hole is too accessible. Like a mink could maybe dig in in that way, or a snake, could get into the eggs. So that's one reason the placement is really important of their hole. So
I saw a couple of years ago on Trout Lake on reservation, Orange Ridge Reservation, and giving a talk, and then it heaped up there. I woke up in the morning, and there's a kingfisher, and it was like coming at June, where the goshawk, and they're flying on the lake, and kingfishers only a couple feet above the water, and winding along, and like goshawks, and they have talent, and they went around and around. And then suddenly the goshawk took off, went up into a tree, and the kingfisher went over and landed below it. It's a game. I was just, gosh,
you're so lucky. I don't have anything like that. But isn't that something? The kingfish, like,
next day.
oh, well, let's open it up to make sure we can get some of the. I'll get you to help me, Erin, with that. I don't trust myself on the PC.
Appreciate patience with our technology here. It's going well, I think.
I think we have a few little glitches, but okay. Stop sharing.
Yeah, that's what.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there we are. And what we think we can do,
Gallery.
we'll go to gallery.
Well, can we get after?
It might. I know there. Let's see. Maybe it's a sharing. That seems pretty surprising, though, doesn't it? Let's see. Sherry, could you say something to us?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
What would you like to do?
Oh,
That's what we're
it's good to see everybody.
Yes. Here.
Oh, we're gonna remove
Yeah.
spotlight.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sharon, do you have a question?
You for yourself to go to.
Yeah. So here and go gallery.
Oh, but still
Okay.
just the two of us.
Yeah.
We were hoping to see the other. Oh, we're down to 7 participants. They've been dropping off. So
Let's see if
we've been here a while.
someone looking at their cameras on a lot of only Sherry does actually.
Well, if anyone has a question from there, they could be in the chat. Should we look in the chat?
Sure.
Let's look in the
See if
chat.
there's a new chat anywhere.
Marina and Aaron, I was watching the chat and nobody had a question.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, I was keeping my eye on that.
Okay.
Well, if anyone who's involved, we don't hit this one.
You should be doing this.
Yeah, that's okay. I did that accidentally right before we started. So it is exciting. So anyone who might want a question, either via video or via chat, please go.
And then otherwise, we just, we have another question from the audience.
Are you familiar with the very short Kingfisher piece written by Walter McCabe?
No,
Yeah.
no.
It's like this.
The fisherman says that you must not make any noise while you are fishing. The Kingfisher declares that you may make all the racket you like, even the loud and clacking racket. You catch your fish just the same.
I love that.
The fisherman says that even if you make the least bit of noise, such as breaking the side of your boat, no fish can come anywhere near. The Kingfisher declares that fishing from a boat is no way to catch fish. You select a dead tree limb that projects over the water. Take your place up there and keep watching. Pretty soon you will see a fish swimming near the surface. While you're waiting, you may make all the noise you like. You will get your fish just the same. The Kingfisher adds that he ought to know. He has been fishing that way for quite a long time and has always made a living.
Oh, wow, I'd love a copy of that.
Yes.
Could you bring that so I could take one? So when was that written? Wow, yeah.
Middle of the 20th century.
Yeah, that is fantastic. One has a illustration too. Wow. And what's your name? Thank you so much. That's great. I love it. Well, I look at this point of maybe we should, unless there's a burning question, like John to close and I'll be in the back and anyone wants a book, I can sign one and sell them or you can be on your merry way. And I hear there's snacks too, right? Yeah. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll stop recording and go find Maria's book.